They said he was too broken to bond, until my scent brought his wolf back from the darkness. The sun had long dipped below the jagged peaks of the Arendor Mountains, and a silver mist rolled over the forest like a living veil. Shadows stretched across the valley below, curling around the crooked towers of Kale's fortress. Some whispered that he was a man long lost to sorrow, a warrior too broken to bond, too haunted to trust. But others said his wolf had fled, leaving only a husk of a man behind.
Yet tonight the forest seemed restless, as though it knew something was coming.
Leora stepped lightly over the frost-tipped leaves, her cloak wrapped tight against the chill.
Her village had sent her, desperate for the herbs that grew only near the cursed fortress, where Kael dwelled alone.
For many feared him. Some feared the wolf within him. But Leora had always been drawn to the unknown, to places where stories of sorrow lingered like perfume. She inhaled the crisp night air, unaware of the scent that clung invisibly to the fortress walls, the faint trace of loss, of shadow, and perhaps a spark of something waiting to return. The fortress loomed like a sentinel, carved from black stone that shimmered under the moonlight. Iron gates hung crookedly on rusted hinges, and the air smelled faintly of smoke and old wood. Leora's heart fluttered, a mix of curiosity and unease. Bait. She was no stranger to danger. The forests of Arendar were filled with whispered curses, wandering spirits and wolves that howled at midnight. But the sense of anticipation here was different. She felt it deep in her bones, a pulse that matched her own heartbeat. As she crossed the courtyard, the sound of movement made her pause. A figure stood at the highest balcony, shrouded in shadows. Broad shoulders, a stern stance, and eyes that seemed to pierce the darkness. Bale.
The rumors were true. His presence demanded attention, even from a distance.
Leora could not tear her gaze away. There was something in him, a fracture, a hidden grief, a wolf trapped beneath skin and bone, that called to her, though she did not understand why. Cal's eyes flicked downward, catching sight of her in the moonlight. He did not smile, though there was recognition there, a spark of wariness.
He had not expected visitors. Worse, he had not expected someone like her, someone alive with warmth, with life, with a scent that stirred something long buried within him.
"You should not be here," Kale said, his voice low, careful. It carried authority and warning like the growl of an unseen beast. "Turn back while you can."
Leora met his gaze steadily. "I need the herbs," she said.
"For my village, they will die if I do not find them." Bang. I cannot turn back. Most would have fled or begged, but she did not tremble. She did not shrink. That alone made him pause. Breath. There was courage in her, yes, but also something more elusive, something that made the wolf in him stir, restless beneath the surface. He turned away, gesturing with a hand, though reluctantly. But the forest is dangerous. The herbs grow near the edge of the cursed woods. Breath. You would do well to avoid the path at night.
"I am not afraid," she said softly.
Yet even as she spoke, the mist seemed to coil closer, curling around the towers like a serpent. Leora shivered, not from cold, but from the sense that she was stepping into a place where destiny and darkness intertwined. Pale did not answer. He disappeared into the shadows, leaving her alone in the courtyard. Her pulse raced as she followed the narrow path into the forest. The trees arched high above her, their skeletal branches like fingers scratching the sky. Pet. Each step crunched over frostbitten leaves, echoing in the silence. She was careful, yet she could not ignore the feeling that she was being watched. And in truth, she was. From the edge of the trees, Kale observed her, hidden beneath a hooded cloak. His wolf had stirred again, subtle, restless, curling at the edges of his thoughts. He had not allowed himself to feel this pull for years. The scent, earthy, clean, but with a trace of something wild, was hers alone, and it struck something inside him that he had thought lost forever. He shook his head, trying to push it down. The wolf had been quiet for too long. He had learned to bury it beneath grief, beneath duty, beneath the weight of his own mistakes. But now it prowled at the edges of his mind, claws scraping against the cage of his reason. Bah. Leora, unaware of the figure in the shadows, reached a small clearing where the rare herbs grew, glowing faintly under the moon. Their silvery leaves shimmered, as if touched by magic. She knelt, gathering them carefully, the soft rustle of her movements blending with the whisper of the wind. Suddenly a low growl rumbled through the air. Leora froze, glancing around the clearing. A shadow moved along the tree line, sleek, impossible, and yet unmistakably alive. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with awe. "You should leave." The voice came again, closer now, carrying the same warning as before. The shadow shifted and she saw him. Kale, the man of legend, standing tall, a figure of strength and shadow alike. Yet beneath the stern mask she saw the faint flicker of hesitation, as though he were holding back something fierce, something wild. "I cannot leave," Leora said, rising to her feet. "Not until these herbs are in my hands." Bed. "My village needs them." The wolf in Kale stirred violently, but he did not transform. Not yet. Instead, he stepped closer, his boots crunching on the frost. His eyes, pale as winter ice, locked onto hers. "You do not understand what you are asking," he said. "The forest takes more than it gives. It will test you." Leora met him without fear, and for the first time in many years, Kale felt the wolf within him lean towards something other than despair. There was something in her scent, her presence, that called it forth, not as a weapon, not as a beast, but as a companion. Something he had thought lost forever, the possibility of trust. The wind shifted, carrying with it the first whispers of the curse that clung to Kale's family line. Pay. The shadow of the past moved with purpose, and Kale felt it curling around him, threatening to pull him back into the darkness he had fought so hard to escape. Leora stepped closer, oblivious to the danger, yet instinctively attuned to it.
"You are not alone," she said, voice soft but steady. "I can help." "I do not fear you." Kale's wolf stirred violently at her words. No one had ever said that to him.
No one had ever dared to face the beast he hid within, let alone offer companionship. The pull between them was immediate, undeniable, like the moon tugging at the tide. Yet he recoiled, haunted by the knowledge of what he had become, by the fear that even a single bond could destroy her. A sudden snap of a branch shattered the silence. "Raise!" Kale's wolf surged forward in instinct, but before he could unleash it, Leora's hand brushed against his sleeve. The scent, her scent, touched him, familiar, grounding yet wild in its own way. Something inside the wolf paused. Something human peered through the darkness. Kale's breath caught. He wanted to speak, to warn her, to push her away, but no words came. But the wolf's howl built within him, rising like a storm, yet for the first time in years, it did not carry only rage or sorrow. It carried a question, an ache, a longing. Leora tilted her head slightly as if understanding, though she did not know how. She did not flinch. She did not run. She simply waited, steady, letting the scent and the moment speak for her. The wind shifted again, carrying the echo of a warning through the forest. Shadows moved with intent, and the curse that had marked Kale's life was stirring. Danger approached, closer, faster, relentless. But Kyle stepped in front of her, instincts flaring. The wolf's power rumbled beneath his skin, yet he kept it contained.
You should leave, he repeated more firmly this time, before it finds you. I am not leaving, Leora said.
Her voice was calm, resolute, and there was a quiet fire in her eyes that neither the darkness nor the curse could snuff out.
Not until you let me help you. For a heartbeat, Kale wavered.
The wolf snarled, frustrated, unwilling to trust. But the pull, the scent, the presence, the courage was stronger than the fear. Something stirred within him, fragile but undeniable. The wolf shifted, ears twitching, nostrils flaring, as if tasting the possibility of hope for the first time in years. Then, as if on cue, the shadows moved. Figures cloaked in black emerged from the mist, drawn by the same dark force that had haunted Kale for decades. The air grew thick with tension, the mist curling around them like fingers ready to claim. Leora instinctively stepped behind Kale, her heart racing but her courage unwavering. Kale's wolf surged, responding to the threat instinctively. A low growl escaped him, warning the intruders back into the shadows. The bond, however tentative, between him and Leora held him steady. For the first time in years, Kale felt the stirrings of trust. Not fully, but enough, base. And in that moment, under the pale light of the moon, Kale realized something he had long forgotten. Perhaps he was not too broken to bond. Perhaps, just perhaps, the wolf within him could rise again, not as a weapon, but as a companion. But the intruders advanced, moving with silent, lethal intent.
Kale knew that the night's calm was a fragile illusion, that danger would not wait.
And as he stepped forward, ready to protect Leora, he could not help but wonder, was this the night he would finally face the darkness within, or would it consume them both? The forest held its breath, and somewhere deep inside, the wolf growled in anticipation, the scent of her guiding him back from the darkness. The next morning the forest seemed quieter, yet a tension lingered, heavy as dew on the leaves. The shadow of last night's danger had not lifted. Leora had slept under a small canopy of trees, her herbs gathered carefully at her side. She awoke to the faint rustle of wings and the distant howl of a wolf, a sound that made her pulse quicken and her thoughts turn to Kale. Kale did not appear immediately. Instead, he observed her from the edge of the clearing, hidden in shadow. His wolf had calmed, but the instinct to protect her remained. The scent, the pull that had stirred him the night before, was still strong. It tugged at the parts of him he had kept buried under grief and solitude, parts he had thought dead. "You should not be here," Kale said again, his voice low, but now there was no anger, only a careful caution. "I told you," Leora said, standing tall, her cloak brushing the frost. "I cannot leave. My village needs the herbs, but—"
I think you need me too. Her words were soft but steady, carrying a quiet confidence.
Kale's wolf twitched beneath his skin, ears flattening and nostrils flaring.
He had not allowed himself to consider that someone might see beyond his brokenness, that someone could feel the pull of the wolf without fear.
He wanted to deny it, to push her away. But the truth was undeniable. The wolf was alive, stirred by her presence, and it longed for her in a way he had never allowed himself to imagine. "You do not understand," he said, stepping closer. "There are forces in these woods you cannot fight. Bet Even I cannot fight them alone. Her amber eyes reflected the pale sunlight filtering through the trees. Then fight with me, she said simply. Bless. Let me help. Cale hesitated. His past had taught him that trust was dangerous, that no one could bear the weight of his wolf without being consumed by it. Yet the pull of her presence, the warmth of her scent, the steadiness of her courage made his wolf stir and his human heart ache. For the first time in years, Cale felt a fragile hope. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying a faint, acrid smell. Cale's head snapped toward the forest, eyes narrowing. But shadows twisted unnaturally between the trees, moving closer. He growled, low and threatening. Leora stepped instinctively behind him, but did not flee. They are here, Cale said. I cannot let them touch you. Before she could respond, figures emerged from the mist, cloaked shapes that moved with precision, as if choreographed by darkness itself. Kyle stepped forward, body tense, wolf instincts ready to protect. Leora felt a shiver run through her, but she did not falter. Cale's wolf stirred violently beneath his skin. He could feel it, fierce and impatient, hungry for freedom and justice. Yet he did not release it fully. Not yet. He turned his eyes toward Leora. Step back, he warned, or you will be in danger.
I am not afraid, she said, lifting her chin.
Face. And I trust you. The word struck him like lightning. Trust. Something he had long denied himself. Something he had thought impossible after the betrayals and bloodshed that had fractured him. The wolf growled, testing the boundaries of his control, but the human part of Cale listened, hesitated, and drew strength from Leora's calm resolve. The intruders advanced, moving swiftly through the mist. Cale felt their presence like a shadow pressing against his mind, but he would not let them near her. With a low snarl, he shifted slightly, wolf instincts heightening, but human caution still holding him back. Leora watched him, fascinated and worried. Yes, she could sense the struggle inside him, the battle between darkness and light, wolf and man. Yet in that struggle there was something beautiful, raw power tempered by restraint, rage softened by the hope that someone cared enough to reach him. Cale sprang forward suddenly, forcing the intruders back. His movements were fluid, graceful, a blur of strength and precision. But even as he fought, his eyes remained fixed on Leora. The wolf within him surged, but he drew on the pull of her presence to anchor himself, to keep from losing control. When the intruders finally retreated, vanishing back into the shadows of the forest, Cale dropped to one knee, chest heaving, wolf instinct still rippling beneath his skin. Leora stepped toward him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. You did not have to fight alone, she whispered. Not anymore.
Cale's head tilted slightly, the wolf inside him quieting, sensing the comfort and trust in her voice.
He wanted to speak, to warn her of the dangers ahead, but words felt heavy and inadequate. Instead, he simply nodded, allowing himself a rare, fleeting moment of relief. The forest around them seemed to sigh, the mist curling around the trees as if acknowledging a shift. Something had changed in Cale, something subtle but profound. The wolf stirred less violently, responding to her presence not with fear or aggression but with cautious curiosity. For the next days, Leora remained near Cale's fortress, gathering herbs and tending to the wounded creatures of the forest. She observed Cale closely, noticing the careful balance he maintained between human and wolf.
He was a man of few words, yet every movement carried weight. Every glance spoke volumes.
At night, they would walk the forest paths together.
Leora sensed the pull of his wolf, a quiet hunger beneath his restraint. Cale began to open to her slowly, revealing fragments of his past, the betrayals that had broken him, the battles he had fought, the grief that lingered like a shadow.
Best. Leora listened without judgment, offering her presence as a balm.
One evening, under the silver light of the full moon, Kale stopped at the edge of a cliff overlooking the valley.
The wind tugged at his hair and cloak, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Leora stood beside him, silent, letting him gather his thoughts. "Bet I was not always like this," Kale said finally, voice low, almost lost in the wind. "There was a time when the wolf and I were one. We trusted, we bonded, and then everything was taken from me. My family, my honor, my heart." Leora placed a hand on his arm. "Perhaps it can be restored," she said softly. "Perhaps the wolf within you is not lost, only waiting."
Kale looked at her pale eyes reflecting the moonlight. He wanted to believe her, to allow the pull of her presence to heal the fractures within him.
But fear clutched at him. If he opened himself to her, if he allowed the bond to awaken fully, what would happen if he could not control the wolf? What if the darkness claimed him again? Yet in that moment, he felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. It was fragile, like a flickering candle in the storm, but it was real. And it came from her. The courage of her heart, the trust in her eyes, the scent that called to the wolf he had thought dead. Suddenly, the wind shifted, carrying with it a faint, eerie sound. A howl, long and mournful, that echoed across the valley. Kale's wolf stirred violently, ears twitching, eyes narrowing. The sound was a warning, a reminder that the darkness was never far, that enemies waited in the shadows, and that the curse that clung to him was not yet broken. "We are not safe," Cow said, his voice firm now, tinged with both caution and determination. "The forest is changing. Something approaches. Something that knows me, that knows the wolf." Leora met his gaze. Then we face it together," she said. "I will not leave you, Kale." Pang.
Not now, not ever. Kale felt the pull of her words, the weight of her trust, and the wolf inside him growl in approval.
Bait. For the first time in many years, he did not feel alone.
And yet the night held dangers he could not yet see, enemies that waited beyond the mist, ready to strike at the moment of his weakness.
As they descended the cliff, the moonlight casting silver shadows on the ground, Kale felt the stirrings of a bond long denied. The wolf within him was awakening, drawn by her scent, her courage, and her unwavering presence. And though he feared the consequences, he could not ignore the truth. Leora had touched something inside him that no battle, no betrayal, no curse could ever erase. They walked in silence, the forest thickening around them, carrying the whisper of unseen eyes. Kale remained vigilant, wolf instincts attuned to every movement, every shadow. Leora walked beside him, calm, steady, her presence a beacon in the darkness. For the first time in many years, Kale allowed himself to imagine a future where the wolf and the man were not enemies, where trust was possible, and where the bond that had been denied him could finally awaken. But deep in the shadows, eyes glinted with malice, and the whisper of betrayal moved like a living thing. Kale sensed it, and the wolf growled low, a warning of trials yet to come. Breaths. For in Arendor, the bonds of heart and wolf were never simple, and the darkness waited for a moment of weakness to claim what had long been lost. The forest grew darker with each passing hour. Mist curled through the trees like ghostly fingers, and the moon barely pierced the dense canopy. Kale moved silently through the shadows, wolf instincts guiding him. The bond with Leora had stirred something long dormant, yet it had also awakened memories he wished he could forget. Memories of betrayal, of loss, of nights spent fighting monsters both outside and within himself. Bait. He did not stop, even as the chill bit through his cloak. Every step felt heavy, every breath a reminder of what he had endured. The wolf within him prowled at the edges, restless, sensing danger in every shifting shadow. Yet it was not just enemies that haunted him. It was the fear of losing control, of letting the wolf take over and harming the one person who had shown him trust. Base. Leora followed at a distance, careful to remain unseen, yet close enough to track him. She knew the forest was perilous, that dark creatures and cursed spirits lurked beneath the mist, but she could not abandon him. Not now, not after the moments they had shared, the trust, the quiet understanding, the spark that had drawn the wolf out of hiding.
Kyle, she whispered, stepping softly over roots and leaves. You don't have to face this alone.
Bay, his eyes pale and piercing, scanned the darkness. For a moment he wondered if she had been caught, if she had sensed the dangers that followed him. Then he saw her, small and determined, standing in the shadows like a flame refusing to be extinguished. You shouldn't have come, he said, voice low but edged with something he could not hide, relief. It's not safe.
I am not afraid, she replied simply. I trust you.
Yes. And you must trust me, too. Bast Kale's wolf growled, low and rumbling beneath his ribs. The wolf could sense her trust, feel it like a tether pulling him back from the edge. Yet the human part of him hesitated. Could he risk her? Could he risk letting himself feel again, knowing how easily the past had shattered him? Before he could answer, a movement in the mist caught his attention. Shadowed figures emerged, more numerous than the last encounter, moving with silent, deliberate steps. They were closer this time, and Kale's wolf surged, tense and growling, ready to defend. Leora instinctively stepped behind him, but her gaze never wavered. Bursts. She could sense the struggle within him, the tension between wolf and man, fear and longing, darkness and the fragile hope she had brought. They are coming for me, Kale said, his words sharp.
For us, I should have warned you. I am here, she said, lifting her chin.
And I will not leave. Whatever comes, we face it together. The wolf's instincts within him reacted first. Kale crouched slightly, muscles coiled, senses stretching into the shadows. He did not release fully, yet every movement, every heartbeat, spoke of his readiness to fight. The bond with Leora, tentative but undeniable, anchored him. He felt her courage like a warm current running through the darkness. The shadowed figures attacked suddenly, moving faster than the eye could follow. Kale's wolf surged instinctively, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to fight as both man and wolf, a blend of calculated strategy and raw instinct. Leora watched from the edge, her heart pounding, yet she did not flee. Instead, she murmured quietly, calling to the wolf, offering strength through the bond she could feel. Even if she did not fully understand it, her presence steadied him, guided him, reminded him that he was not alone. The battle was swift but intense. Cal moved with lethal precision, striking shadows with a combination of skill and instinct.
Yet even as he fought, he kept one eye on Leora, ensuring she remained safe.
Breaths. He could not allow the darkness to touch her. When the attackers finally withdrew, vanishing into the mist, Kaal sank to one knee, chest heaving, wolf instincts still rippling beneath his skin. He was drained, yet something had changed. Something had shifted within him. The wolf had tested the bond and found it strong, anchored by her presence. Leora stepped forward, placing a hand gently on his arm. "You did not have to fight alone," she whispered. Kale's wolf stirred, ears twitching, nostrils flaring, as if tasting the hope that had begun to root itself in him. He could feel the pull of her trust, her courage, and her presence. It was a strange new sensation, both comforting and terrifying. Before the next days, they moved deeper into the forest, seeking the source of the disturbances. Leora learned to read the subtle signs, the bending of branches, the whispers of leaves, the faintest flickers of movement that spoke of magic and danger alike. Kale observed her closely, noting her calm determination, her ability to face fear without flinching. Slowly, he began to trust her with more than just his physical safety. He allowed glimpses of his thoughts, fragments of his past, to surface. "I was not always like this," Kale admitted one night as they camped beside a silver stream, the water reflecting the moon like shards of glass.
"There was a time when the wolf and I were one."
We were unstoppable, fearless, but betrayal took it all. My family, my home, my purpose. Bad. And I have carried that loss ever since."
Leora's hand brushed against his. A simple gesture, yet it spoke volumes.
"Then let me help you," she said softly. "Let me walk with you, not behind you, not ahead, but with you. Perhaps together we can find what was lost."
Kale's wolf stirred, a low growl vibrating through his chest.
The wolf remembered freedom, remembered trust, remembered companionship. And for the first time in years, Kale allowed himself to imagine that the wolf could rise again, not as a weapon of fear, but as a guardian, a protector, a friend. But the forest was never truly safe, as if testing them. A shadow moved among the trees. A figure cloaked in darkness, watching, patient and deliberate. Kale sensed it immediately. The wolf within him tensed, ears flicking, body coiled like a spring. Danger approached, and the bond with Leora would be tested in ways neither of them had anticipated. That night, under the light of a waning moon, Kale and Leora faced the figure together. Its presence was oppressive, a dark energy that made the air thick and heavy. The figure stepped from the shadows, revealing a mask that reflected nothing but darkness. It spoke in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once, yet its words were precise.
Ah!
"You cannot hide him," the figure said. "He belongs to the shadows, as all broken wolves do." Kale growled, the wolf beneath his skin responding, ready to fight, ready to defend. Leora stepped forward, calm and unwavering, placing a hand on his arm. Her presence anchored him, reminded him that he was not alone, that the wolf could rise without losing himself. "We do not belong to the shadows," Leora said. Her voice was quiet but carried the strength of conviction. "We choose our own path, and together we will not fall." The figure recoiled slightly, as if surprised by her courage. Kale's wolf surged, sensing the power in her words, feeling the bond deepen. Yet the human part of Kale hesitated, torn between fear and hope. Could he trust her completely? Could he allow himself to feel again without losing control? The forest held its breath. Mist curled around them, silver in the moonlight, hiding both danger and promise. The figure retreated, melting into the darkness, but the warning was clear. The threats were growing, and the bond they had begun to forge would be tested in ways they could not yet imagine. Kale sank to the ground, breathing heavily, wolf instinct still rippling beneath his skin. Leora knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder.
"You are not alone," she whispered.
"The wolf is yours. The darkness is yours to face, and I will be here." For the first time in years, Kale allowed himself to believe her. The wolf stirred, no longer just a creature of fear and grief, but a part of him that could heal, protect, and bond. The path ahead was uncertain, dangerous, and filled with shadows. But for the first time, he did not face it alone.
The bond between them had begun, fragile and tentative, yet unbreakable in its own way.
And as they sat together under the moonlight, the forest whispering around them, Cale realized something he had long denied. Perhaps he was not too broken to bond. Perhaps with Leora, the wolf within him could rise from the darkness and find its way home. Yet deep in the forest, unseen eyes watched, waiting for a moment of weakness, a misstep. The darkness was patient, cunning, and relentless. The next trial would come, testing not only Cale's strength, but the bond he had begun to form, and the courage of the woman who had awakened the wolf from its long slumber. The forest seemed alive with tension. Mist swirled around the trees like restless spirits, and the moon hung high, casting silver light over the shadowed ground. Cale stood at the edge of a dark clearing, wolf instincts alert, muscles coiled like springs. He had sensed the enemy before they appeared, the hidden hand that had followed him and Leora through the forest, testing, watching, waiting for the right moment to strike. Beside him, Leora stood tall, her cloak brushing the frost-tipped leaves. The bond between them pulsed like a quiet drumbeat, subtle yet undeniable. Cale could feel her courage, her trust, and the gentle strength that had drawn the wolf from the darkness. But for the first time in years, he was not alone. Not really. The darkness is near, Cale whispered, voice low, his eyes scanning the trees. And it will not wait. I am with you, Leora said, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Despair. Whatever comes, we face it together. Cale's wolf stirred beneath his skin, responding to her words. It was no longer a creature of fear and sorrow, but one of alertness, strength, and loyalty. He could feel it, flowing through him, blending with his human resolve, ready to defend and fight, but also to protect what was precious. From the shadows, figures emerged. Cloaked shapes, moving with precision, their eyes glinting with malice. The leader stepped forward, dark energy swirling around him like smoke, eyes narrowed in cold calculation. Cale recognized him, the one responsible for much of the pain in his past, the architect of betrayals that had fractured his family and his heart.
You cannot hide him forever, the figure said, voice sharp, echoing through the clearing.
Best. The wolf belongs to the shadows, and so do you. You cannot escape your fate. Cale's hands clenched, the wolf growling low in his chest. I belong to no one but myself, he said. And no one threatens those I care about. The figure sneered, raising a hand to summon a dark energy that twisted through the mist. Cale's wolf surged instinctively, instincts and human reasoning merging as one.
He stepped in front of Leora, muscles coiled, ready to protect. Leora placed her hand on his shoulder.
Together, she whispered. You are stronger than this alone. Let the bond guide you. Cale inhaled deeply, feeling the pull of her presence. Her scent, earthy and warm, grounded him. He could sense her trust, her courage, and the bond they had built, a tether that anchored the wolf and the man alike. For the first time, he allowed himself to embrace it fully. The shadowed figure unleashed a surge of dark energy, swirling through the clearing like a storm. Cale leapt forward, his body moving with a blend of human precision and wolf instinct. The fight was swift and fierce, a dance of shadows and silver light. Leora stayed close, her presence a steady rhythm that guided Cale. She whispered softly, words of courage, words of trust, words that kept the wolf grounded. The bond between them strengthened, flowing like a current through the chaos, uniting human and beast in perfect harmony. Cale struck with precision, breaking through the shadow's defenses. The wolf within him howled, a sound that echoed through the forest, pure and unrestrained, yet controlled by the human hand guiding it. The figure staggered, dark energy flickering, then dissipating like smoke in the wind.
For a moment, silence fell.
The forest held its breath. Cale stood tall, chest heaving, wolf instincts still rippling beneath the skin, but now tempered by the bond that Leora had helped awaken. She stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm, steady and warm.
You did it.
She said softly, eyes reflecting the silver moonlight. The darkness cannot claim you, not now, not ever. Cale looked at her, pale eyes shimmering with emotion. The wolf inside him settled, ears flicking, nostrils flaring, no longer restless but calm. He felt whole in a way he had never allowed himself to feel before.
The bond had not only saved him, it had awakened him.
I could not have done it without you, he admitted, voice low. You brought me back from the darkness. You reminded me who I am.
Leora smiled, a quiet warmth in her gaze.
Best.
You were never lost, she said. You only needed someone to remind you.
Perhaps. Someone to walk beside you even when the path is dark. Cale's wolf growled softly, almost like a purr of contentment, as if acknowledging her words. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them, no longer guarded, no longer afraid. The human and the wolf within him were united, guided by trust, courage, and the bond that had begun under the silver light of the forest. The clearing seemed to exhale, the mist lifting slightly as if acknowledging the shift. Shadows no longer lingered at the edges. Breath. For the first time in years, the forest felt at peace, though Cale knew the world beyond these trees would always hold challenges. But he no longer faced them alone. Let us return, Leora said softly. The forest has tested us, but we are stronger now, Bay. Stronger together, Cale nodded, wolf instincts and human heart aligned. He did not speak further, for words felt unnecessary. The bond, the trust, the connection, they had already said everything. Together they walked back through the forest, each step a statement of newfound strength and hope. As they emerged from the trees, the first light of dawn touched the peaks of the Arindor Mountains. Baras. Golden rays spilled across the valley, casting long shadows that stretched and dissolved as the sun rose. Cale and Leora paused, taking in the sight, the warmth of sunlight on their faces. Best. You see, Leora said quietly, even after darkness, the light returns. Cale exhaled slowly, letting the warmth fill him. The wolf within him shifted, settling completely, no longer restless, no longer haunted. He was whole, yet changed, stronger, healed by the bond they had forged.
I see, he replied, voice steady.
And perhaps the light is only brighter when shared. Beck. They moved together toward Cale's fortress, the path familiar now but no longer lonely. The walls that had once seemed foreboding now felt like shelter, not imprisonment. The bond had not only saved Cale, it had changed him. Awakened hope where despair had once reigned.
Inside the fortress, they found signs of past battles, reminders of grief and loss, yet the emptiness no longer felt permanent.
Bare. Cale walked through the halls with Leora beside him, each step a quiet affirmation of trust, courage, and the promise of what could come. Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them deepened. Cale learned to trust the wolf within him, to embrace it as part of who he was, guided by Leora's unwavering presence. Leora discovered the strength in herself she had not known existed, the courage to face darkness not only outside but within. Together they faced challenges, threats from those who sought to exploit Cale's power, whispers of curses in the kingdom, remnants of shadows from the past. Yet each time the bond between them proved stronger than fear, stronger than grief, stronger than the darkness itself. One evening, under the light of a full moon, Cale and Leora stood on the cliffs above the valley. The wind tugged at their cloaks, carrying the scent of pine and earth. The wolf within Cale howled softly, a sound of contentment and acknowledgement. "You are no longer alone," Leora said, her voice carried by the wind. "And neither is the wolf within you."
Cale nodded, eyes fixed on the horizon. "I am not," he replied.
8. Not alone. Not ever again. The moon cast silver light across their faces, highlighting the unspoken bond between them. But past, with its grief and betrayal, had shaped them, but it no longer defined them. Together, they had faced the darkness, survived it, and emerged stronger. As the sun began to rise, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Cale and Leora turned toward the fortress, ready to face whatever challenges awaited. Base. The bond between human and wolf, between trust and courage, between love and redemption, had been forged in the shadows, and now it shone brighter than the dawn. And though the world of Arendor would always hold shadows and secrets, Cale and Leora knew one truth above all. Together they could face anything, their hearts, minds, and spirits bound forever by trust, courage, and the awakening of the wolf from the darkness. The forest whispered around them, carrying the scent of earth, pine, and freedom. And somewhere deep within, the wolf stirred, no longer restless, no longer alone. Finally, home.